Hello and welcome to Studying and Test Taking Tips. My name is Sarah Call and I am the Academic Success and Retention Specialist here at Upper Iowa University. Let's get started. Okay, so first off, right off the bat, I want you to think about your current study habits. So if you want to pause this, you can go ahead and do so. But first, thinking about, do you study different in college than in high school? Did you even have to study in high school? Because I know for me, I didn't. And so college was kind of a wake-up call. What works well for you? So in your studying, what are some things that maybe you found that you really like so far? Have you found anything that works well for you yet? What are your distractions? So, is it your phone? Is it people? Is it noises? Is it, having a window? Do you feel like you're efficient in your studying? So the measure of that is, do you feel like the effort you're putting into studying is paying off in those grades that you want to see? And do your habits match your goals? So if your goal is to get straight A's, are your current habits aligning with that? Will those habits bring you towards that goal as opposed to away? So some elements of effective studying, and we'll talk more about each of these, are your study goals, time, location and environment, and study strategies. So study goals, identifying those specific goals before you study. Maybe it's splitting that studying into very specific smaller chunks. Maybe it's a set amount of time that you're going to, put into studying. Or maybe it's some sort of outcome. So usually I'm making something or something along those lines. So the example here we have is making 20 flashcards. And then SMART goals, which are my favorite type of goal, are specific, they're measurable, they're attainable, they're relevant, and time-based. And I did talk about those quite a bit in my goal setting workshop. So reference that if you want to know more about SMART goals, or come talk to me or email me, whichever. So talking about time, thinking about, okay, you're going to schedule time to study. So maybe that's 20 to 30 minutes at a time. For you, it's going to be a little bit more based on how long you focus for. So if you think you can focus for maybe 40, 50 minutes at a time, go ahead and do that. Making sure you're setting a timer or alarm to kind of help keep yourself on track. So sticking to your plan, right? You'll want to turn off your phone, closing apps. Maybe it's just, again, being away from other people. Do you get distracted by people? And then identify when you are most effective when studying. So if you have made it a goal to study at 11 p.m. every night, but you are not a night owl, you might want to rethink that goal. And so the other thing, making sure whatever you do, you're breaking it up and having breaks in your study time to help you stay focused. So when could you take advantage of smaller amounts of free time in your schedule? Because like I, have mentioned all throughout the series is you don't have to devote 3 hours at a time to a task. Maybe it's just 20 minutes between classes. Maybe it's pulling out your flashcards in that time, whatever you have. Think about that and utilize that time. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about the Pomodoro technique. Pomodoro is named after the word for tomato. I can't remember the language off the top of my head, but it means tomato, and it's based off of those like little those kitchen timers that are shaped like tomatoes. But the Pomodoro technique is pretty popular. Step one is deciding the task that you need to do. So it doesn't have to be studying. It could be things like cleaning your room or, demucking your gutters or whatever. And then you're going to set that timer to 25 minutes. You're going to work on the task until the timer rings. And then you're going to take a short 5-minute break. And then you're going to repeat steps 2 through 4 times. And then after that 4th time, you're going to take a longer break, as we see in step 5 over here. And then from there, you repeat until the task is done or it's time to do something else. but it's a very efficient way to do things. I myself haven't tried it, but I have read some things. So it could be worth a shot. Other considerations with time, being realistic is a major one. So recognize your optimal study times. Like I mentioned a little bit earlier, if you're a night person or a morning person, take that into consideration. Don't schedule 5 continuous hours of study time. Don't overload yourself mentally there. And then just do a bit of reviewing daily to avoid all-nighters. So just a little bit here about how to divide time before an exam. We have an example here that goes from 2 weeks before to even after the exam. This person made a plan for how they're going to study. They started doing that, and just by those 2 pieces right there, the rest of this isn't rushed or crammed. So even the night before, they didn't have to cram. They just had to do a review. They got some relaxing sleep time in. Morning of, making sure you're eating a breakfast and being on time. Hour before, again, they're kind of doing a little bit of relaxing here. A few minutes before, they're calm, and then afterward, they're not overthinking and moving on because they did the bulk of the work back here. So next, we're going to talk about those location and environment considerations when you're studying. So what are some things that distract you and shouldn't be in your study area? Maybe it's your phone, maybe it's TV, maybe it's access to apps. Another thing to consider is what level of background noise do you need to focus? So for some folks, that's dead silence. For some folks, that's a little bit of music. I know I'm one of those people that needs some sort of background noise in order to focus. Next, considering how much space do you need for you and your study materials. So maybe it's one of these like bigger tables, right, for everything, or maybe it's a small little high top. And then for my folks on campus, what are some good study spots on campus? Those of you who are not on the Fayette campus, where's your favorite place to study? What's a good environment for you? And so just think about that. Study strategies, we're going to talk a bit about these. First up being note/flashcards. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with flashcards, it's basically you take an index card or sticky note, a smaller sort of piece of paper, card size, and then you'll write the question on one side of it, and then you'll write the answer on the other, and you use that sort of as a test yourself, so you can shuffle them to make it random. They're very portable, so they're good for that, but they can be used during free time. So that could be time between classes. If class gets out early or is canceled, you could utilize that time for studying for that class on the go. So say you're a student athlete and you're on a bus to who knows where, pull out your flashcards, use that time wisely. And then you can also use them while you're maybe at a doctor's office, waiting for an oil change, in line at the supermarket, whatever you want to do there. Next, we're going to talk about purposeful notes. So don't just write things down blindly based on what you hear. Making sure that you take complete notes so you don't have questions later. If you just write the word rutabaga in your notebook, no context, right? You're not going to remember who, what, why, how. So being conscious of the notes you are taking, making sure you're taking time to process what you are writing, write thoughts and questions you have during the lecture or reading. So that's kind of part of being an active listener as well. Take notes in your own words if you can. Obviously, there's some terms and subjects that you can't necessarily switch out with your own lingo, but do what you can. Avoid highlighting. It's a very passive way to read, as we've discussed in another workshop. You're just putting color on words and not guaranteeing that you'll even look at it again, or you're possibly making everything else seem unimportant when it is. And don't rely too much on PowerPoints and slides. So this retrieval practice and force recall. So how are you bringing the things that you learned to the front of your mind, or how are you making sure that it's lodged in to your brain properly? So for example, one way you can work on this is practice remembering what you were trying to learn in multiple ways. So here I just did a simple rephrase: the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, or rephrase: the powerhouse of the cell is the mitochondria. I'm sure there's better examples there, but that was a very simple rephrasing one I could think of. Try to pull the information from memory in your own words. So maybe you're saying, okay, mitochondria are known as the powerhouse of the cell because it's responsible for extracting energy from food through cellular respiration. And the more times you practice these things from memory, the higher chance you will have of retaining that information. When possible, say the information out loud. So maybe that is to somebody else, maybe it's just by yourself. And then lastly, get creative. So learning is not a one size fits all. Maybe for you, it's making like little graphics like this that help you remember concepts and ideas. Maybe it's drawing a mind map. Maybe it's writing a poem about it, right? So utilize those skills that you have, those talents, those things you love doing, and incorporate them into your learning. So a little bit about study guides. In college, your instructors may not give you a study guide. If they do, please thank them, because that's a lot of extra effort that they didn't necessarily have to put in. But in order to make your own study guide, first thing you want to do is write questions based on lectures and your notes. And if you have a book that maybe has some good guiding questions, include those. Write a question on one side of the page or flashcard and the answer on the other side. So you're kind of making those questions into mini test questions. Make sure you're breaking complex topics into simple questions. So maybe it's, a topic that has 4 separate ideas behind it. You're breaking each one of those into a different question. And then cover the answer or flip over the card and try to answer that from memory. And then just repeat, quiz yourself a few times a week. Like we said, maybe you're waiting for your oil change, you've pulled out your flashcards or something along those lines, but doing it frequently. Next, we're going to talk about group study sessions. So if you're interested in them, I know some people are not really good at studying with other folks, and that's okay. But how to have a productive group study session. So maybe you assign each person a main point, maybe it's a chapter, and then they create a study guide pre-meeting. Then you all get together, you discuss the main points and identify maybe some common points. So maybe you see, okay, this is how chapter 3 and 4 are tied together. You see those things then. Compile all of it into one study guide. And then taking turns quizzing each other, answering in your own words, using some of those forced recall strategies, whatever you want to do there. Maybe it's making your own little Jeopardy game to make it more fun. And then the other benefit of group study sessions is if there's a topic someone isn't clear on, you have other people in the room who can help explain it. And if one person's explanation doesn't quite get it, there's a chance the other person's will, because we all have different ways of expressing and explaining. And so there's a higher chance of an idea sticking when you have multiple people explaining it. So here's some preparation and review strategies you could try. So preparation is doing the work of making the things. So for example, we have over here, they're making question cards, and then in review strategies, they are reciting the word cards or reciting the question cards. They're making self-tests, they're taking self-tests. So that's the difference between preparation and review. And the preparation is just as important as the review, because even in the preparation stage, you are engaging with the material. You're maybe not getting it as lodged into your head as you would with review, but you're looking at it, you're putting pieces together. It's still very helpful. An important slide here is to reward yourself. So give yourself an appropriate reward after studying, completing a task, or after just doing well on an exam. And so here I had some cute little ideas you could do. Low cost, right? So you could take a nap, you could go for a hike, You could paint your nails. TikTok is free, things like that. So next we're going to talk about some test taking tips. So before the exam, get a good night's sleep, right? Eat regular meals. I'm pretty sure some of you are athletes. You know the importance of those two things alone. It applies as well to academics. Arriving early so you don't feel rushed. Making sure you have materials you need for the test. So calculators, formulas, something to write with, something to write on. And then use positive thinking. And I was thinking about this a bit. If you can't quite make the jump from negative to positive, at least just try to get to neutral. So instead of saying, oh, I'm going to fail this test, I'm awful, blah, 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 maybe get to, okay, you know what? I studied a bit. I'm going to give my best, and whatever it is, it is. Versus positive would be like, oh, I'm going to ace this. It's going to be easy. It's fine, you know? I mean, there's realistic positive, right? But then there's that unrealistic positive. But again, if you can't make the jump to positive, that's okay. Just try to get to neutral. So during an exam, right, once a test arrives, maybe you were just looking at a formula for something, not like write that down as soon as you get the test. Making sure you're reading all directions thoroughly. Scan the entire test, so maybe just flip through it, get a general idea of what's going to happen. And then start with the shortest, easiest questions first. You know, things you know, it'll help boost your confidence for the rest of it. Maximize your score. So what that could mean is if you have, 10 questions left, but only 5 minutes, and some of the questions are worth more points than others, right? You'll want to focus on those questions more. And if you get stuck, move on and return to the question later. Maybe you just need a few minutes more to kind of think about it. Maybe it's, maybe the answer to it is somewhere else in the text. That happens too sometimes, where formulas may not be provided in question 1, but you'll notice, oh, hey, they mentioned the formula in question 22 that you can then use on question 1. So a bit about some types of questions you'll see on exams. First up being multiple choice. Try to state the answer before looking at the choices. Chances are, if the answer you think of is there, probably the right one. Cross off answers you know are incorrect immediately. So take those off your radar. And then test each answer if you can. So, if it's a insert the blank, try putting that word in there to see if it fits. True false questions. So watch out for absolute qualifiers. Those are always and never statements. These generally indicate a false statement, not always, just generally. Watch for negatives, so nots and cannots, and try reading the statement both with and without these terms and see if it holds up. And then make sure you're combing through those details on those true-false questions. So watch for transposed numbers and facts that have been slightly altered. Those true-false questions will do that a bit, where they'll just kind of put everything maybe 1 inch to the left, and you get confused by it. So pay attention. Next, we have matching questions. So we have an example down here of what those are. But cross out items that have already been used. So as you say, like, you put A over here into question 1. Okay, you cross out option A. So you can't use it again. Match words that are grammatically similar. So if you're really good with grammar, that could be a strategy. If you're not, don't do that. If words or phrases are similar, look for slight differences and make notes. And then this is probably the most important one, is count the number of options in each column. So we see over here in our example, we have 5 possible responses, but only 4 questions. So that tells us right off the bat that one of these is not going into a space over here. And then you got to figure out which one, of course, but pay attention. Essay questions. The key to those, well, one of the major keys is managing your time. Paying attention to what the question is asking. So are you being asked to compare, or are you being asked to explain, right? Those two things are very different. Draft a quick outline of your major points. So it doesn't have to be a super involved outline, but just give yourself an idea of, okay, what points do I need to make? If it's handwritten, please be conscious of your handwriting. And also if it's handwritten, leave space to add your thoughts later. So, maybe it's not even adding thoughts later, maybe it's just fitting everything onto a page. That kind of goes with the handwriting thing. Test anxiety. So we know that a little bit of tension is good. It shows that you're kind of taking things seriously, but a lot can be problematic. Distress is never exactly what we want in a situation. So one way to kind of get around test anxiety, maybe, make sure you're studying. So the more familiar you feel with the material, the less anxious you may feel. So note the may feel. Again, some people, no matter how well studied they are, they're never going to like testing, and that's okay. So in approaching some of your mental thoughts around testing that might help, think the word stop and take deep breaths. Visualize success, or again, maybe just move to neutral instead of positive. And give yourself some encouragement. Make sure in your test anxiety management, right, you're paying attention to your body as well. So taking deep, relaxing breaths, monitor your body, and tell each part to relax. Guided imagery using all five senses. And if moving helps you, then go for a walk or a run or whatever it is you like to do there. So some grounding techniques. The five senses grounding is a very important one, I feel, because I know folks with PTSD who use it fairly often when they're having one of those sort of episodes. So it goes like this. First, you're going to name 5 things you can see. Then you're going to name 4 things you're touching. Name 3 things you hear. Name 2 things you can smell. And name 1 thing you can taste. So kind of in having to focus on your environment, you're bringing your awareness out of your head and out of whatever is maybe causing you distress, and you're bringing it to the present moment and surroundings. Over here, we have the body scan. So you're just scanning your body for points of tension. So maybe you're clenching your fists on accident. Maybe it's your jaw. We see here, bringing your shoulders down, relaxing your hands and feet. And then are you breathing? Some people, when they're stressed, will kind of hold their breath and not breathe as often. So these are good for just getting grounded if you're having a moment of anxiety. The key is to take them slow. Don't just fly through and unclench your jaw, bring your shoulders down. Like, just go, okay, I'm going to unclench my jaw. I'm going to bring my shoulders down. Yeah. So after an exam, right, after you've gone through all of that, reward yourself. Take some time away from the material. You deserve a break. If it helps you, look up a few answers you weren't as confident about. However, if this isn't helpful and it'll stress you out and you'll go, oh, I got that question wrong, and you're just going to stew on it, don't look back. At least at that time. And then when you get the exam back, or even if you don't get exams back, but you can talk to your instructor and say, hey, what did I get wrong in this exam, right? You may want to take note on that and know what concepts you missed. So that way, if your final exam is cumulative, you have a point or something you know you need to study for.